2001. I was taken to meet Pastor 𝐓𝐿 𝐏𝐥𝐚𝐭𝐟𝐨𝐫𝐬, and he said, don't introduce this man to me, I know him. And I was thinking, where does he know me from? And then he says that in 1979, he was praying, and he saw an army of men and women that would sweep across Africa to bring change to the continent of Africa. And he said, you're one of them. So when Pastor Poju invited me to this, it was not just coming to a conference to present. I think that it is the fulfillment of something that I was told in 2001, and I'm excited. And thank you so much, my brother. And I want to congratulate every single one of you, because you are part of that army. You are part of the revolution that will take place across Africa. And so congratulate your neighbor. I've got a very simple task, and that is to talk about how to build businesses and scale them. So my experience is really from a telecommunications background. That's where I started off. And we, as part of, I'm sure that a lot of you have heard of Econet Wireless. The group chairman, Mr. Strive Masiwa. I was responsible for all the international business, all the work to establish the companies in the different countries. And it gave me an opportunity to look at things from a different point of view, starting as a startup that was worth minus $10 million to being a global company worth billions and billions of US dollars. And so I'm going to share a couple of experiences as we talk about scaling the business or building a business and scaling it, because I've seen that. And I also want to share the fact that, yes, you can go onto Google, you can go into different types of platforms to gather information about how to do it. But there's a lot more things that I have experienced, and I just want to share some of my experiences with you. Sorry. So the first thing that I want to talk about is just how the world, the business environment that we operate in is impacted, the things that shape the business environment that we operate in. So the first thing that we see is that, number one is ideas. So traditionally, and for generations, ideas have shaped how business is constructed, how business is built, how the marketplace operates. Ideas. Good ideas and bad ideas have impacted organizations, have impacted the marketplace. I will give you a few examples. Growing up, if you went to your parents and you started talking about how your dog was talking to your cat, they would probably think that there's something wrong with you. But the guy called Walt Disney took a dog talking to a cat to a new level, and this idea had led to the multi-billion dollar, in fact, trillion-dollar industries that we see today, of images and Popeyes, and there was Popeye, then it's now all these things that are taking place, the movies that are taking place, all came from a guy who had an idea talking about a cat running with a dog. But there's so many other ideas that are shaping our world, the political ideas, the economic ideas. People have come up with how nations should be run. People have come up with how the politics of nations should be done. Communism has emerged from ideas. Capitalism has emerged from ideas. So ideas are so important, and ideas have shaped the way that we do things. We also have a situation where, philosophies. So philosophers have come through, and they have say this is how things should be done, this is how things should be operated. Philosophers have shaped the way we think, the way we act, the way we approach different types of things. So philosophy is a very, very serious matter in as far as how our environment is shaped. So if we do not engage with philosophy, we can have somebody with a very, very poor, perspective, very poor ideas, imposing their weaker ideas on the way that we operate. So we've got to understand how philosophies operate, how philosophy operates. What philosophies in business are you subscribing to? What philosophies are you seeing that you must engage with and deal with? And how do you define things? They say that the man with the definition of the thing controls the conversation. So how are we as entrepreneurs, as Africa, going to redefine or define, how are we going to create a narrative that will ensure that we are on the forefront of the global stage? Look already that the media, the global media, has got its own perspective of what Africa is. They shape and reshape what Africa is. So we need to be able to deal with that. There is culture, and in a lot of countries, I've worked in probably 27 African countries, and each one of them, the fact that we are black doesn't mean that we've got the same culture. So each country has got unique cultures. And even when you go into a particular country, like I worked in Nigeria, lived here for 3 years, but worked here for probably 10, 15 years. And Nigeria itself has got different cultures that shape the way that business is done. Now, I just want to talk about the modern influences of change. So we've got technology. Technology is changing the way that we run our businesses. There is the internet. The internet has completely changed the way that we do business. We have got globalization. We cannot ignore globalization. Globalization is changing the way that we do things. There's political populism. So you can call it Trumpism, you can call it Putinism, you can call it Cheesism. All these things are changing the way that the nations interact with each other. And that's a serious, serious thing that we have to consider as we look at how our businesses are operating. Of course, the issues of climate change are having an impact on what we do. And so we see all these modern drivers of change combining with ideas, cultures, and philosophies to reshape and shape our environment. Now, I'm just giving a background of what entrepreneurs have to deal with every single time. Now, in talking about my own experiences, I just want to, I'm just calling it my own experiences, but you know what? These are issues that we have to deal with as entrepreneurs every single day and every single time. So when we started Econet, like I said, it was an idea. First and foremost, it was an idea. Remember that in 1993, 1994, every single person was looking for telecommunications. But no one ever said, I want mobile communication. In my country, Zimbabwe, the waiting list for the fixed line was 42 years. Here in Nigeria, when we came in 2001, there were 500,000 telephone lines for almost 100 million people. 500,000 phones. And 400,000 phones were in the hands of corporates. The rest were in the hands of individuals. Now, what that means is that there were people in Nigeria that had never heard a phone ring unless they heard it on a television. So we're starting from that idea, from that perspective that it's just an idea. There's nothing else. And we start building a business. So first and foremost, it was an idea. It was a new environment, a new technology that had never been implemented before. And there we are. We were young. I think when I joined telecommunications, I was 32. The founder of Econet was 36. And the average age of staff was 22 years old. Average age of management was between 28 and 32. And young people going into a market that has never been there before. We were facing deregulation, okay? At that time, it was deregulation that needed to happen because the government was in control of fixed networks. You remember governments needed to say that they were in control of all the telecommunications, the incoming calls, outgoing calls, they controlled and monitored. So we are coming out and saying, I'm going to establish a business that is independent of government, where technology would deregulate every single thing that the government, all the laws that were set for telecommunications were going to be deregulated by technology. We were facing a situation where we needed funds. Now, on average, for a telephone network, even in the smallest country, you have to have at least $100 million US. We are young people. The telecommunications that we want to build is so much bigger. The banks in the country don't have the capacity to do it. So we're now having to learn about financing. Financing of big projects, financing of projects that would only make a profit in 5 years, financing of a project that the bank managers did not understand, okay? We were competing in the different markets with giants that existed, giants coming out of Europe because they were the ones that were bidding for telecommunication, for GSM. It was the first time. I remember in Botswana, when we submitted our bid, the newspaper said, there's some Mickey Mouse company that has applied to do this. They've never operated, because we'd never operated. They've never heard of us. They don't know of any of our experience, but we had a determination. I'm just painting a picture here of what entrepreneurs face at different levels. But these are the challenges that we were facing. We're also facing a situation where we would go international, going into new markets. Remember, long back, before the internet, the Minister of Finance or Minister of Foreign Affairs in our country would have to apply to the communicate with the Minister of Foreign Affairs in the country that you wanted to go to. Now, the internet was saying power and influence is now concentrated in the individual, not concentrated through government. Okay, so that change is something that we were facing at that time. I don't know if you sort of understand where I'm coming from. We were facing also a situation where going into the different countries, I talked about culture. You needed to understand culture. Now, telecommunications is extremely unique. There is nothing that I learned in school that I didn't have to apply. History, geography, finance, mathematics, whatever I did at school, I had to apply. I mean, when we came to Nigeria, you needed to understand that building a network in the Delta region, where there is all this dense vegetation and rain, etc., is different from building in Kano. So you needed to understand the geography. In terms of the history, I think when we were building in Burundi, I recruited the best team that I thought we could have, until I was called by the regulators and they said, but why have you recruited this one tribe? Your network is based off one tribe. I said, I don't even know what you do. They said, don't you know the history of our people? So you are perpetuating something that we are trying to remove. Same thing here in Nigeria. I just applied, I advertised, I received 10,000 applications. And then when the network was being built, I was approached, we had governors in different places, and they were saying, yeah, but your network is only concentrated amongst these people. So you can't come to this area. I mean, I had staff kidnapped in certain places, I will not mention where, because we'd recruited people that were not relevant to those areas. We had to understand religious differences, that in Kano, you do not do this and do that and do that. It's all things that you need to learn and to understand. I'm just saying that the technical side of building a business, to say I'll scale it, is not, yes, there's the technical stuff that you'll get in lecture rooms, but this is the stuff that we had to deal with and that we continue to deal with. I could go on, I'll leave the presentation available for anyone who wants to look at that. But technology, as it has come, the internet has changed the way that we operate, has changed, global consumer trends. A lot of, we now have virtualization, we have got softwareization, we have got convergence, we've got data analytics. Now, let me tell you, one of the challenges that we needed to deal with is that you're building a business, you're saying that we've got now a 3G network, 2G network. But whilst you're building and investing in a 2G network, 3G has started coming through. We were going to make our money on voice. And now all of a sudden, WhatsApp has come because of virtualization. So you've got an evolving technology that is taking place. So the dynamism in the marketplace, is so serious. It's, you've got to continue to act. You've got to continue to work on it. The consumer themselves have changed. Long back, you could tell the consumer what you want. You could tell the consumer what they need. But as technology has come through, the internet has come through, the consumer tells you what they want. It's changed. The definition of marketing has changed because now, with Apple, with all these companies, they'll tell you a need that you never thought you had. Yet marketing is telling you that identify consumer needs and build a product that satisfies that need at a profit to the company, isn't it? For those that do marketing. But technology is saying, no, we will create a need and we will tell you what your need is. And so that has caused consumers to change and the behavior of consumers to change. Now, I'm just giving a background to what the kind of considerations that you must have if you're going to scale your business. And so you've got all these global changes, the consumers, everything has been reduced to the phone. Do you remember when Kodak was big? Do you remember Agfa? Do you remember the guys that, I always bemoan the fact that at my wedding, somebody came and took pictures, and then they said, you know, the film, if you want your pictures, you pay for each of those films, right? And so I don't have 60% of my wedding pictures because I couldn't afford it at the time. But today, everything is on the phone. You're making payments on the phone. There's been a convergence that is making mobility and the cell phone a central part of what we do and how consumers behave. And so when you're talking about scaling a business, you have to take that into consideration, that the consumer is no longer the guy that was there in 2000, prior to the internet. Today, you're going to the doctor, you can go and stand on a machine that reads and gives you 50 to 60 biomarkers. And you go to the doctor and you say, doctor, I've got this issue, that issue, that issue, that issue, that issue. It's not the doctor telling you what you have. It's you telling the doctor 54 biomarkers concerning yourself. Can you see how things have changed? A doctor can make a prescription, and I see my children doing that. They go and they start Googling the medication that they've been given. And they tell you that, no, I think this medication will affect me in this way, that way, or this is this and that. Because the consumer trends and behavior has changed, and everything is around mobility. Now, how do we build businesses in a digital environment? Now, when we entered into telecommunications, there was a lot of disruption that was taking place, okay? And in a digital environment, you either disrupt or you get disrupted. And we found that there were serious changes that were there around the business model. Today, a lot of companies that are struggling are not struggling because there's no market, are not struggling because there are no customers, they're not struggling because they don't have cash, they're struggling because their business model has not been constructed correctly. So in 1G, they were asset heavy, everything, usage-based. I remember in Zimbabwe that the telephone company used to have these adverts where they said, do not jabba, 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 okay? In other words, reduce your usage. That's what they used to say, reduce your usage. Don't jabba, 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 jabba. In GSM or in mobile, we emphasize usage. And in fact, your business model is customer numbers times price times usage gives you a revenue. So in the fixed network, they were saying, in terms of the business model, we will tell you what capacity we have. We will choose the customers that we want. And we will control your usage. On the other side, in mobility, we're saying, increase capacity as much as possible. Increase usage as much as possible. Increase the price to the extent that you can, except if it is in Nigeria where everyone complains about everything. Can you see the differences in the business models? So I'm emphasizing the issue of the business model. What business model are you developing for your business? And is it a business model that can be scaled? Because if you are going to control capacity, if you are going to control usage, if you are going to control price, you will never be able to scale because that's the basis of your revenue. And so it's so important to be able to articulate your business model. Now, I'm going to give an example of Nokia versus Apple. What you see on there is the CEO of Nokia when they were taken over by one of the tech companies. At that press conference, he said something that is very significant. He said, "We didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost." So they were doing the correct thing. And a lot of businesses right now are doing the correct thing. They are doing the right thing, but they are forgetting the forces of change, the modern forces of change. And so Nokia, Ericsson, those guys were so good at what they did. I think together they controlled 90% of the market. And Nokia was big. And Nokia used to produce Nokia 2110, 3110, 4110, whatever. You know, it would go on like that, okay? For them, it was a hardware game. For them, it was about perfecting the processes, taking control of what was going on within their, their technology. They were so focused, they didn't even interact with the market. They used distributors. They did not want to talk to the consumer, okay? Then came Apple, and they looked at this. Well, BlackBerry thought about it, but BlackBerry again wanted to control everything. Then came Apple, and Apple said, no, this is not, they said this is not a hardware game. This is a software game. Remember the guy who was playing soccer with the others, and he appeared not so good with soccer, and he picked up the ball and started running with it and kicking and running, and everyone said, "Foul, what are you doing?" And he said, "I'm playing a new game, and it's called rugby. With this one, you don't just use your feet. You use your hands, you use this, and you push the other guy. There's no foul. You can just ram the other guy and run through, no problem." Okay? And this is exactly the attitude that we must have if we're going to build businesses that will survive in this current environment. You've got to be looking at how to change the game, how to create new rules. And technology allows us, anyone, because there's no one with a monopoly of the brain, you should be able to build something that just changes everything, okay? So Apple comes in and says, no, it's a software game, number one. So we're going to give you iOS, and with iOS, yes, the hardware might be expensive, but we'll give you the hardware for free. I mean, we'll give you the software for free. We'll give you updates for free. No problem. Where Nokia was saying, mine. These guys came and said, oh, here is our API. You can develop apps and connect to us and use our platform and service your customers. But we want to know who your customer is. We want the right to analyze the customer. We want the right to see the behavior of the customer. We want to own the customer. Nokia is saying, use distributors. We don't want to mess around with Nigerians. We don't want to mess around with the Kenyans, nothing. We just want the distributors. These guys were saying, we want to know you. You know, what do you like? What is your name? What is your age? Where do you live? Do you understand? So a business that will scale you've got to have control of information and be able to analyze it so that you can determine what the customer needs. So the business model itself, you need to be able to define your business model. You need to be able to identify the drivers of your business. What are the drivers of the business? You need to be able to identify the strategies, put in the structure and then, of course, formulate the business plan. And now, the considerations, long back, the considerations were not hectic. But today, with technology, there's so many considerations that you have got to take. You've got to put in, you've got to make a lot of decisions around, your business models. You've got to make a lot of considerations around your business to look at all the things that would go into the business plan. What are the things that impact the consumer? What is the consumer looking at? What are is your business model simple? Is your business model what are the key components that will make your business model work? So there's so many issues that you've got to look at there. You cannot exclude the customer. Understanding the customer. I've got hospitals, and in our hospitals, we're really just doing just revisiting the business model. Because the patient comes, and we just say, what are you suffering from? Okay? Oh, you've got this. And all we're doing is focusing on the disease. And focusing on, we don't know their name. If they came 3 times to the hospital in a week, they would fill forms 3 times. Same information, name, date of birth, address, everything. You understand? But a modern business model will not enable us to scale on that basis. We don't know the kind of diseases that are out there. We don't know the preventative issues that need to be dealt with. We don't know the curative measures that must be taken. Nothing. It was just, we don't know the customer. In a modern business today, you have to know the customer. You've got to, if you're going to do hypermarketing, you've got to drill down to understanding the customer. You've got to own the database. You've got to understand every single element of what the customer is all about. You've got to look at technology. You've got to look at innovation. You've got to look at business processes and systems. Because just giving an example of my hospitals, a patient comes in at the reception and they fill in a form. From there, they move on and they go to the lab and they fill in a form. They are taken to the wards, they fill in a form. But the business process should be such that once you have been registered, every single department within the organization knows. So you've got to look at those kind of things, okay? I wish this subject was about every single area that we have failed since technology came in. I think I'll write a book on that. Because I used to have an ambulance service, one of the biggest ambulance services in our region, road and air ambulance. And our business model was based on capitation. So medical aid companies would give us $1.30 for every single customer. It was a very profitable business, okay? And I just want to emphasize the business model. And we're so comfortable, we didn't need to do anything beyond that. Then Zimbabwe was hit by a tsunami. There was hyperinflation where, even today, I've got $100 trillion note, okay? $100 trillion note. Hyperinflation like you have never seen before, where if you were going into a restaurant, you walk in and it's a certain price. By this time you start eating, it's a different price. If you order Coke, now when you order the second Coke, the price has changed. If you're at a gas station, every single car that is pouring fuel is paying a different price, a higher price. You guys have never seen that, okay? No. I know you've gone through things, but you have not gone through that thing. So I'm just saying, we've had to look at business. That business collapsed. Why? Because medical aid, everyone came down with their medical aid. They stopped paying medical aid. And we were based on capitation. Now, the customer belonged to the medical aid company. The customer didn't belong to us. We didn't know the customer. We didn't have access to the customer. Okay? And the customer wanted to build, to go through their medical aid company, not directly with us. We're just a service provider. So the business model is so important. And I just want to overemphasize. So the traditional business models is what you call the platform business model, which is what your Nokia did. They control the processes, their vision, mission, values is well articulated. And they've got business processes that ensure that their product is a perfect product, going on like that, and they use distributors. They don't know the customer. Now, so these legacy pipeline processes, you've got to ask yourself, am I a Nokia at the moment? Do you have a pipeline process? And you are perfecting your processes all the time, but your processes are not effective. Then you look at what Apple brought through. It is the platform business model. And with the platform business model, you've got the platform iOS, and then Apple came through and said, oh, by the way, there's iTunes. By the way, there's the App Store. By the way, there's the Apple Watch. By the way, there is, so they started adding all these things. A community of services, a community of collaborations, a community of, where they make money, not from charging $10, $50, where they make money from charging $1. When Apple was fighting with the music industry to say we want the albums to be broken down so that a person can buy a song instead of buying an album, no one understood what they were talking about. Their competitors did not understand what they were talking about. When they introduced the iPod, no one could tell what they were talking about, but they were increasing capacity in the iPod. They were increasing battery life in the iPod. They were doing all sorts of things until they introduced the iPhone. Now you start connecting the dots. Oh, so iPhone, music, App Store, this and that. Do you see the point? So the business model became so revolutionary for their competitors to turn around and start looking at it. It became very, very difficult. And so I just want to say here that when we are looking at our business models, and that's the only message that I want you to come up with, to take away. If we are building a business, how do you structure your business model? Is your business model such that you can build on it, you can scale, and the scaling really starts with the foundational plan itself. It starts with the foundational plan itself. So within the Econet group, we started off with Zimbabwe, and we realized that the skills that we're getting in Zimbabwe were enough to take us to Botswana. So I went to set up our Botswana network. And even then, the kind of thing that we were doing is we were introducing the same things, replicating them all over. Can your business model be replicated? Awesome. So business model, business model, business model. Thank you very much.